Hello, Yes But Why listeners. This is your host, Amy Jordan. Welcome to Yes But Why, episode 304, my chat with improviser Anisha Pucadyil. But first, let's talk about our sponsors. Yes But Why podcast is sponsored by Audible. Sign up today for your 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. Listen, guys, I'm not the only person in the world who's listening to books now instead of reading them. It's very convenient. I mean, so many people are stuck in their cars driving long distances to work these days because they're making them go back to the office that, they want to enrich themselves. And, there's so many different kinds of books and podcasts. So it's not like you're forced to read something that you don't already want. Every book's on there. There's a bunch of Audible originals, and most of the podcasts, including this one, are available on Audible. And if you go to the audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy link and you download and create your own account, well, it helps Yes But Why. It puts our name out there. It gets me a little kickback. Who knows what I could create with all of that money? All of the content, all of the excitement. Maybe there'll be tours. Who knows? It could all be because you wanted to listen to some awesome books. I just added 3 books, and did I write them down so I could tell you as I was doing this intro? No, I did not. But I promise you, I just recently bought a bunch of books on Audible because they were new, cool books that I was really interested in hearing. And, as soon as I finish this Russell Brand thing that I'm listening to, oh, God, love his voice, you know what I'm saying? I am going to just dig right into those. And it's all because Audible is easy and pretty much just the way I consume books these days. So you got to do it. Go now to audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. Sign up and get your account today. Yes But Why podcast is also brought to you by Podcastcadet.com. Podcastcadet.com is the company that my husband Chris and I run to help podcasters. Chris is out there all the time helping people with computers. That's something that he picked up during the pandemic. He's creating computers and helping people make sure that their computers have the right power to do what they need to do. If you're running a podcast right now and, you don't know why your computer's running slow, or, you're having issues with drop frames on your camera, or, there's something that's going on as you're doing your recording and you're like, what is causing this glitch? Let us help you. Chris is so knowledgeable when it comes to AV help. I mean, he helps everybody with everything. None of the computer equipment that I'm currently recording on right now would work at all if not for Chris. Please don't turn off, guys. He's in the other room. But podcastcadet.com is pretty much just whatever we can do to help you with your podcast, we want to help you. So check out podcastcadet.com. There's videos. And then if you need help with something technological, or, I just took this awesome marketing seminar with my previous guest, Annie Schiffman. Oh my God, so great. I would be happy to counsel you on some of the things that I learned with marketing, or hook you up with the workshop yourself because it kind of was amazing and you should take it as well. Podcastcadet.com is just our company that we created so that we could help you with your podcasts. Every day we're learning new things, and we just want to share it with other people because we know it's hard and crazy. And sometimes when you ask questions on Facebook groups, people are really snarky about it. We're not going to be snarky. We just want to help you out. Now, maybe you're going to come, you're going to chat with us for free. You're going to get some free content on the website. But maybe, you need to buy a service. If you do, use the code YBY20 and you get 20% off, right? So we can help with whatever you need. Maybe it's free advice. Maybe it's something that you buy. Who knows? Whatever it is, we want to help you with podcastcadet.com. This week on Yes But Why, I chat with Playback Theatre artist Anisha Pucadyil. We discussed connecting to culture and history through the arts and the importance of teaching artistic forms to children. Listen in as we talk about improv, playback theater, and building community. I now present to you Yes But Why, episode 304. Anisha Pucadyil is dedicated to sharing her passion for the arts with others. Enjoy. I'm Amy Jordan, and this is
Yes, But Why?
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 This is the Yes But Why podcast.
I think, so from the past 15 years, I think my hypothesis has been that there is an artist in all of us. If we were left to our own resources, if our food and rent was taken care of, I think we all would abound in finding that artist in us. But the way we are socially conditioned makes us prioritize or makes us validate some expressions of art as higher or give some importance to some ways of being artists more than others is what I felt. And which is what, so I started my career working in a school. I was a kindergarten teacher, and from then, and at that point in time, I didn't know about improv. I didn't know about wireless pole, and I wish I had some way of experiencing this before. But I was I am very committed to the idea that early introduction to the arts can lead to a foundation for an individual to find themselves. And I feel it is really unfortunate the way our education systems are carving out people who might not know what makes them tick, what makes them unique, what makes them alive. And it is only through my journey in art is where I have found that kindred spirit to resonate and to also find myself. And the past, all these years that I've been working has been in this leading to transformation of articulating what is it that makes me me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're so much more optimistic than I am. I'm all like, the world's us and we're cool, and then there's them and they're not cool. And you're like, no, everyone can be cool. I'm like, yeah, I guess. But I appreciate that, especially with the knowledge that you were a kindergarten teacher, because I was like, oh, that's good. You need that positivity to be able to encounter the littlest among us, because they're a handful for sure. A wild bunch. I think that when you're a child, you are connected to your purest art self that you ever can be. And so then you get older, and then the idea of other people and their opinions of you start to weigh upon you. Well, first you realize it, and that sort of breaks the ability for pure play. But then after that, it's just sort of like more and more things put upon your shoulders of like, this person doesn't like you for this reason. This thing is going on for this reason. Everybody thinks that your, eyes are not cool. Like whatever thing it is, on and on and on, until you're an adult and you have all these beliefs about yourself that are just based on negative reviews that you got along the way. And those things then hold you back from being an artist, like you're saying. And I feel like you have to get rid of, like when I teach an improv class, that's the first thing I try to do is let's get rid of those parts of you that are judging you, and let's try to get to your pure play self. So for you, what do you think when you were a little kid, what was your pure play self?
Quite fascinating. I was thinking about when I imagine like me as a tiny me, I do remember having these it sounds so funny now, but a imaginary kind of film set where I had like these characters and I was to play, and there was a lot of role playing going on. And but I think I owe a lot to my mom, because my mom was she herself was very passionate about arts and theater and heritage and culture, like the intangible and the tangible heritage. So the city I was born and brought up in has these beautiful Mughal monuments that were made because of the Mughals who visited us. So Ahmad is the Mughal emperor who set up the city and made some of the most beautiful mosques in that city and on that side of the river, on the other side of the river. So this whole idea of how your built heritage affects you is something that she used to explore through summer workshops. And this is like 30 years ago, like it wasn't a thing then. And like going to those workshops every summer, like for 7 years consecutively, I think really laid the groundwork for me being also very passionate about it. So we used to play with, like, I remember one exercise. It's like a crystal clear memory. We just had this artist who broke a pot. And then he asked us to, like, take that piece of the broken pot and make art out of it. And I remember going and, like, collecting, like, leaves and flowers and paint and acrylic. So it was like we were exposed to a lot of different techniques over those 10 summer days, and it was like make it your own. Like, how do you want to make it your own? And then the older students had a kind of theater workshop where Nukkad Natak, it's like street side theater show at the end of the 10 days. And it's just, I don't have any photos or any videos because that was a different time, but I feel for me that play was kind of the base of where those seeds were put, and that curiosity remained, and that commitment, and the work I've chosen to do. I've been trying to find that similar kind of path of how do I create the same kind of spaces for young people, adults, children, and how do I find that for myself? But yeah, I think somewhere around the way, like you said, like social expectations, and I did fall into the whole fear of the stage and fear of, like, I remember going blank, and all of those things happened, and I went through that arc also, which is why I think I moved away from theater and moved away from, I didn't want to perform, and it was very traumatic to go on stage and go completely blank and have everyone's eyes go into my neck. Like, I can still remember, and like I could see my father recording this one performance. You can see like that red dot of a recorder at the end of the hall. Yeah.
That's so classic, the dad with the video camera. It's like, it's so, I think that you're younger than me, but at the same time, like, it's so just around this generation. Like, when they first got the cameras, all the parents were like, yeah, give it to me. I'm going to bring it to every play. Like, oh man. You know, I hear what you're saying. You know, it's fascinating you telling me about this, because moments ago you said that you wanted to, you know, bring art to children so that they could, like, acknowledge who they are as artists. And it's clear that that's what your mom was doing. Like, that was her journey as well. She was like, okay, art is the way to open your eyes to everything, which I think is a really cool, like, using theater and art to understand history and culture. I mean, legit, like, the best way. It's almost the only way to understand these kinds of things, is because we're so distant from some stuff that only if you, like, kind of act it out or, like, tell the stories over and over are you able to. I mean, every bit of history was just people telling stories around a fire for hundreds of years. So it's like, the idea of connecting to that, and that was your mom's thing. Oh man, your mom sounds so cool. Like, it's just, like, so amazing, like, that she was into that, and she, like, made an opportunity for you. And these summer workshops, like, how can we make these happen? Like, these fun summer, like, life experience where you're, like, creating art out of, you know, broken pots. Like that's so deep too. Like the idea of being like, this piece of art will be broken and then you will create something new out of what is broken. It's like, oh, and what a like culture lesson. Like, oh my gosh, yes. You know, every time something is broken, we just reinvent with the pieces. Like, oh man, that's some deep situation. Like the adults involved in creating these workshops, like go them, like A+, just doing the best. That is such an amazing thing. And I love the idea that it's become something that you want to do now with your own life, that like this experience was so positive for you, even though, you know, we all have our ups and downs when we get, like I said, when we get to a certain age, we've got too much going on. There's hormones and a lot of feelings that everyone's judging us. And then you really have to push past that. Like some people never lose the constant concern for other people's opinions about their lives. And that's a tough thing. That's a really, really tough thing. I find personally that I only let it affect me occasionally. But your mother was solid and taught you some things, and my mother and the things that she taught me were a lot about like, go your own way and don't let anybody tell you that your way is the wrong way. And so it's these things that our mothers shared with us that are the bedrock of what's going on. So now I'm like, yeah, I'm different from people. It's fine. They might have thoughts about it, but enjoy your thoughts. Like that's not, but it's not going to affect me. It's not going to change my life or the way I live it. Man, moms, go moms. So you were in this, doing these summer workshops. Gosh, I'm just like so impressed with these summer workshops. I'm like, I want to go. You mentioned that as you were getting older, you had a break from performing because it started to really make you self-conscious and whatnot. At what point when you got older did you get past that? What was it that helped you break free of that fear?
So I've always been performing. Like I was at a convent school. Every 15th of August we had Independence Day celebration. So we had a choir that would sing patriotic songs, and every 24th of December we have carol singing competition, like squad wise. You have different colors and they all complete. And so I was always very involved in all of those activities. And I also battled with like that fear and that blankness that I spoke about. And while battling with it, I still managed to show up, and it was a constant like tug of war and trying to find my confidence and finding my voice and trying. So I think I found my space in a group. So I love choir. I love the whole preparing, the whole planning, the whole, and I think that's very much part of my personality. I'm someone who loves a potluck. I love getting together and cooking, and yeah, so through school and then through college, and then when I started working as a teacher, so when I was in this international school, which didn't have event for Christmas, I was like, let's make this happen. So I had a theatre and education course. I implemented it in my school, brought all the kids from kindergarten to standard 12 together to like celebrate. And I think afterwards, like I saw my role as being more of an administrator and implementer, because I feel very passionately about this. And like, though maybe in 1986 we have implemented in our Education Act that arts should be integrated in the classroom, it's far from being implemented in reality in the schools. And I felt very passionately about that. So once I started like my career after I finished college, I started working when I was in college, but like my career was constantly about trying and finding organizations that could share my passion and give it more direction, give it larger scale at which I was looking to implement these ideas. And I feel it's such a capitalist idea. Oh, we should get like more art to more organizations. So, and yeah, so I think that's when I kind of, the artist in me was somehow dwindled and forgotten. I think but like I still found some ways of keeping it alive. So when I was in Delhi, I was part of 2 choirs. I was learning opera at that point of time. So I had a little experience in that. And I also wanted to note, like, it's like the privilege that allows me to kind of get into these circles and participate enthusiastically. And I feel when I came to Bangalore, there wasn't like any choir which would just sing for the joy of singing. I am still interested in protest music, and I'm very interested in how communities come together to tell their stories and their music. So because I couldn't find any choir which was not affiliated to the church, and I'm not very religious, I started a choir with a group of friends. The young students who had come from Africa, and together, like Damien and all, we came together and we built a choir called Choir Crescendo. And then we had 2 seasons of that. And I think that was like the last kind of like, I didn't see of myself as an artist. I didn't know anything about improv. I'd never, like, at least in India, pursuing the arts is not an option for creating a career in. Like, in the UK, I see people, like, they train in music and they train in theater and they imagine that would be their profession. I could never dream of that as an option for me. I had to find a job. I had to get somewhere. I had to do something with my life. And I've been trying to find different organizations that could understand my passion and channel my passion. So I was very involved with the Society for Promotion of Indian Classical Culture Amongst Youth. It's quite a mouthful. It's called SPICMAC. So we try and bring a really acclaimed, renowned artists. Like, so in India, you have people who've been learning an art form from the time they were 5 and 4, and their grandparents, and they are like, it's like a lineage that has been passed. So, so now I have the understanding of how this privilege kind of cuts out some people from being in the room. But at that point of time, it was more about, we have great artists and we need to get young people introduced to these artists, and that will create magic. But now better sense prevails that itself is not enough, and there are systematical things in place that don't allow some people to imagine being an artist. Yeah. In like just before the pandemic, it was the protests that were happening in India. We have our great government trying to implement acts that remove the citizenship of people who've been living in this country for so many years. And we had women, and especially Muslim women, coming out and sitting on the road and protesting. Farmers who were requesting for these farmer laws to be repealed that are anti-farmer. So it was in showing up for protests that I found like my voice, and the anguish that, I come from Gujarat, which is where our great Prime Minister actually comes from. He won the elections over there and he got to power over there, and now he's come to center, and you can see the orange across the country in all the policies. And maybe we should edit this from the, I don't know. Yeah, so you can see how this right-wing agenda is unfurling across a democratic country. Democracy is a farce. In these protests, citylamps started hosting these sites of rest. And so they were hosting playback performances for people who were protesting, people who were anguished, to just take a breath and just to be in community. And it is then that I was like, I went for a jam at Citylamps and I can also be an actress. And then the focus was not on me being an actress. Focus was on me honoring the story of the teller. The focus was on me observing what are my blind spots that doesn't allow me to listen to the story of the teller. And that again, because it's a community form, and for me, community is something that really inspires me. I found a lot of solace, and it is then that we went into lockdown. And even in Citylamps, a lot of people couldn't stand online playbacking. But we had like Lakshmi and a few others who, taking names, we had quite a lot of people who came together, and Lakshmi was kind of give us that framework, share the knowledge of what playback is, what are the tools, and I can't believe it's been 2 years, but it is, that is what has held me through this crazy time.
I first want to touch on a couple of things that you've talked about, a lot of different things. But the first thing I wanted to touch on was the idea that you were talking about how they used to get these like famous actors to come in and talk to students in school, and how like the idea of that was like, oh, that sounds nice, but it doesn't really get them to, experience art. They just met a person, which is great. Please meet people. But at the same time, like, that doesn't then make the kids in the room go like, I want to do what they do, because it's like, it's like you meet anybody with any job and you're like, oh, that seems interesting what you do, but it doesn't immediately connect back to who you are. And I think the other part of what you were talking about was implementing art in the schools, and even to sort of kind of connect this with the idea that you were saying that like you're not an artist because you're an organizer. So I'm bringing these ideas together to say, I think that art, as you were saying, in schools needs to be the physical act of making some art, and that the physical act of making some art does not necessarily make those children artists or like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. But the act of doing the art allows you to have discussions about other things, like your mom knew about history and culture. You can make the art, and while you're doing the art, it can open your mind to understand other things. And that is why it needs to be in schools. Not because it's like, oh, well, they all need to know about Shakespeare and like to sing a song or whatever. It's like, no, we don't need to sing on key and like know how to, analyze a play. That's not the point. The point is like, I drew a picture and it made me feel like X when I drew that picture. Like, not is the picture great? No. Like when we see these 5-year-olds doing drawings and they're like nothing, and they're like 3 sticks, and they like tell you that it's an elephant, and you're like, that doesn't look like an elephant. It's not about whether or not it looks like an elephant, or even if it is an elephant. It's about like that during the moment that they were drawing it, it made them feel a certain way. It made them empowered to do something, as opposed to just watch something. Like in the case of the actors coming in and talking, you're just witnessing it. You're not participating in it, right? Now, the reason why I bring up you as an arts organizer, and my theory, or rather, I think it is art. Being an organizer of art is art in and of itself, because art can't exist without somebody saying, hey, we should get these pencils together and draw. Like, somebody has to be like, let's sit in a circle and sing. If that person doesn't say it, it doesn't happen, which means art requires it, right? And if art requires an art organizer to be happening, then the art organizer is like part of the art, right? It has to happen. And so your efforts throughout your life of trying to organize art for other people, of like getting groups together and helping people to connect in that way, is as important, if not more important, than the person singing in the scene or the person acting on the stage or in the movies. Like, that's great that that actor said those lines, but in order for those lines to exist, we need a writer, someone to find that writer and go, yeah, let's put that up in the movies. And then hundreds of other people who might not themselves consider themselves artists, but actually are, because they are part of creating something else, right? And so, I feel like there's a lot of ways in which people like ourselves who are artists like to put ourselves in boxes that like keep us separate from being an artist, as if artists are something on a high pedestal and we can't quite get there because I'm not good enough, right? Oh, I only get people to a room. It doesn't mean that I'm an artist. Yeah, cool. But the symphony doesn't actually play or happen unless a conductor says, hey guys, come on, let's all focus. Is that guy an artist? Of course he is, because he's organizing the whole thing. Is he playing an instrument? No. Waving around a stick, right? But the whole thing wouldn't work without that situation. So every part of creating art, from the person who is getting you to the class, to the person who's teaching the class, to the person who's making the pot that then gets broken, who comes up with the idea to break the pot, like every person is contributing their personal skills to the art, right? And in the same way that the kids having to act, like do the drawing, doesn't make them an artist, but gives them an experience, the act of putting together art, I think, makes everybody involved in that part of being an artist. Like, those kids can be artists if that's what they want to do, if that's something that they allow themselves to be. But like, you know, your work as an organizer is as important, if not more important, than sometimes the creative performers in the scenario.
Yeah, I resonate with what you've shared, and I think with SPICMACE, like to just like put it out there, like they've been around for 40 years. It's built on a network of volunteers, and it's also built with this very idealistic idea that, you know, introducing being in and around art can inspire you and take you to another level of self-reflection, the discipline. So SPICMACE has like a convention where they have, like, for 5 days, you have lecture demonstrations, you have workshops, you have a Gurukul system where you can actually go and spend time with an artist for a month. I think the challenge is when systems get institutionalized and where there's not enough reflection in our blind spots, which inflect the way we create these systems, and then we don't see who's not inside and why are they not inside. So I feel that is like some self-reflection for any, like in like we've been seeing in the US, that there aren't that many Black improvisers teaching, and there are all these companies run by white improvisers. I think similarly for Indian companies, there is a lot of reflection to be done about the privilege that we hold. Our middle class sensibilities affect who we think is great art and who we think is maybe not, and there is a lot of reflection to be done on that. You know, when it comes to people in power making decisions of what kids should be exposed to, themselves not having experience. Like, I've never seen a cabaret all my life because it's just heralded by, oh, that being so wrong, and all these puritanical ideas of what should be, what should be not, and just inflicting these uninformed ideas on young people and not allowing people to make informed choices. And I feel more than anything, we should be aware about like right-wing governments coming in power, about them inflicting their choices. And you know, today it's about against a particular community. Tomorrow it's going to be about what we want to eat and drink and wear. So we really need to get our act together and speak up about it.
Yeah. And also to connect to something else that we were saying, which was that now we have the ability to, with technology, we have the ability to talk to each other and see these things and like you can burn as many books as you want. We can still talk to each other and have conversations and know things are different than what they're telling us, right? And the fact that there's something about during the pandemic, everyone going through the same thing at the same time, which is never happened. Well, maybe not never, but certainly not never when we were also able to talk about it. Like the fact that we went through something and then we all were able to get online and be like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm experiencing. What are you experiencing? And then to really like take that in a larger sense, like it's wild. Even today, like every day there's like articles and different things about like, do you recognize a different perspective from yours? Like even just how you're dealing with the pandemic. Like I read a lot of things that'll be like, this is what the pandemic has done to single people who like are alone, who have been alone for a long time. And it's like, that's nice that you have your, family that you can be with. Not everybody's got that. Right. They've got this alone experience. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's still happening for so many people. And like, how many years can you be stuck in your apartment? Like the idea of that. And then, but that there's articles out there to be like, let's reflect on someone different than us. Like, that's great. And the fact that we are able to talk to each other country to country and say, and even connect like historical things or like, hey, my government seems to be acting like this. Didn't your government act like that pretty recently? What'd you guys do to stop that? Like how did that work out? And like, hey, I feel like this is very similar to what you guys went through. How do we work our way out of this problem? Just talking, just like connecting and figuring out how to do it. Do I think that any country at this current moment has solved it? No, I don't think so. But I think the nice part about us each being able to talk to each other is that maybe each group has one piece of the pie. And if we talk, we can finally put the pie back together. Like, and understand, like, oh, okay, you guys figured out this thing. Well, if we put that with this thing that we figured out, then we've finally got a solution that's real. That's like acknowledging all the ups and downs, acknowledging all of what happened, what will happen, what could happen, and really making an informed decision. What for you you mentioned that you wanted to be involved with arts organizations about how to get art more involved in schools and how to connect that to the understanding and study of history and culture. How is that working out for you now? Are you like, checking out places to possibly connect with? How does it work for you?
So in the middle of the pandemic, I also have had a major transformation that I had to move from Bangalore, where I was living for 7 years, to London in UK.
Whoa.
So
quite a move. Which
has been an opportunity, and obviously it's based on the privilege that I've had my partner moving, and I'm still kind of finding my roots in London, and it has been, I must say, the improv community that has literally improv and playback community that has literally handheld me through the entire process of transition, which would have been so isolating and lonely. And since I have come here, I am involved with True Art Theatre and with London Playback Theatre. And so with the True Art Theatre, we wrote a proposal to the Newham Archive, and we were successful in getting a grant for so we are looking at the Olympic legacy and the volunteers who made the Olympics happen, the game changers who made it come alive, and we're going to be playing back their stories. So we are archiving and interviewing volunteers and playing back their stories and recording that and adding that to the archive. And we are taking playback to the college students at Newham, and we'll be having a public show in June. So things are moving slowly and steadily. I've also reached out to my local community, which has after school that runs on Thursdays for children in the age group of 10 to 16. So I'm hoping to bring improv and workshops and exercises. They're already doing, like, they're making a film. There's a lot of knife crime in the area. There's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of drugs. So the organization, which is also called FAME, coincidentally, is looking at reaching out to these children, building relationships with them before they get involved in any antisocial activities. So I think for me, it's also about constantly unlearning what are my own blind spots, constantly trying to read. Like, until very recently, I didn't know how deep and mutating the caste system is, how it seeps into our language, how it seeps into the way we judge people when we meet them for the first time, how it seeps into the way we look at appearances and judge people. And it's that unlearning of one's own prejudices, which I feel like I'm trying to focus and gather myself, and also break my own ideas or ideologies.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't know if any of us are ever truly able to break it, but I think we can become observant of it and like try to work against what that is. Like, I was telling you earlier that I was listening to a podcast about a psychologist who was studying corruptibility, and he was talking about this like natural like base brain situation where we all go back to like Stone Age thinking, where it's like big, tall, brawny men, they're the leaders. Like, why? Because back then they were who you'd be like, hey, there's a lion that's going to kill all of us. Go take care of that. And that guy took care of it. And we were like, he's the best, leader. And that kind of stuff is apparently ingrained in us so deeply that unless we acknowledge that we're naturally going to be like even the idea of something that has really affected me as far as, cause most of my circles are artist circles. So like I'm pretty much just hanging out with actors and I have this weird bias against, like, I'm going to call them shiny, attractive people. Shiny's a friend of mine's phrase, but it's like people who are attractive to everyone. Like, like a person who, like, everyone has different tastes, but if there's 20 people, they're all like, oh no, that person is hot. Like, that's for sure. And because of that, certain people get more. They get more in their life and they're given more, and people let them get away with stuff because they're attractive. Now, the attractiveness varies by time, time period, who's attractive and who's not, evolves over time, of course. But as a global culture, in each time period, the time period that we exist, we kind of all have an agreed upon thing. And we give more to this crowd than, other people. And so since I do a lot of casting and I'm doing a lot of like working in groups, I have this weird, but I realize I go the opposite way. So it's like, I know that people want to give stuff to attractive people. So I tend to give less. So if I see a group of people and there's like 10 people to cast and 5 of them are shiny, I'm like, way less likely to pick those 5 that are shiny, because I'm like, they're already going to get stuff. I don't need to give it to them. And that's like the same thing. It's like giving it to them or taking it away from them. I'm still using something about them that has nothing to do with who they are or their talent or anything, and using it to affect my way of dealing with them. So the reason why I bring that up is like, there are so many parts of ourselves that we have to like acknowledge we are doing and like see, oh wait, I'm judging this and I don't need to be judging this way. And it's so hard to stop yourself in the moment from doing that. Like, I've definitely done a whole show, looked down and been like, oh man, I didn't give that guy any good roles because I am just working against him because he's too hot. Like, and it's like, why do I have that? You know, like, I don't know. It's like everything where it's like, if you're part of a group that's been held back, and then you're going to help your people that are like you versus the people that seem like the ones that have been holding you back, right? And then you have this ingrained in you, and then you can't get away from it. Like, you can't separate yourself from it. And the hardest part for all of us is to separate what is the, like, empirical truth of it. This person's, like, who's the more talented, which person really does fit into the role that you're trying to cast in this moment, right? Oh, okay, this person maybe, why are you not choosing that one person? Is it because of this reason or that? You know, like, what am I doing? What are my prejudices and why? You know, and I think it's not something I can break free of, but it's something I need to acknowledge and try to work with, like, try to move through it. Like, oh man, I feel that negativity in me right now, but I can't try to focus on that, you know?
Yeah, I think in playback especially, because we are playing back spontaneously personal stories of the audience member, we have to be really careful that apart from, covering maybe the literal aspects that were shared in the story, to tap in on the underlying unsaid social aspects of the story, to listen carefully, perhaps about our own prejudices, so that they don't rear their ugly head, because it's not about us, it's about centering our performance, our showcasing, our playing back on what the teller's story was. Yeah, so it's been, I mean, I'm just been in it in 2 years, and I think playback, and especially the community sharing, the reflections after every show, the preparation of the body and the mind before the show, is not the same Anisha who opened this huge theater piece and went blank. Like, so I feel, I feel there is a opening in community forms like theatre of the oppressed, playback, improv, to reflect on what our choices are and to see what instigate us. Like, one of our mentors, he came for we did like a year-end show, and he was like, reflect on what are the stories that did not speak to you. What are the stories that did not move you? And observe yourself on that. And even this idea of blind spots, like, Will C is based in the US, and this is beautiful podcast run by Noah, who has interviewed the who's who in playback theatre, and it has also been, like, I feel very blessed, very lucky, very privileged to have been able to access, like, all of these knowledge forms would have been completely inaccessible. Even in my wildest dreams, I wouldn't have been able to reach out to speak to these mentors, learn so much. And I'm also standing on the generosity of my team members who, despite that pandemic, despite all the volunteer work that they were doing in terms of trying to get oxygen cylinders to people we didn't even know, we pulled through, sharing these skills, sharing this knowledge, and creating an online team. And like, I feel like I stand on their shoulders, their hard work, their learning and reading, which they have been kind to share. Very, very grateful for that community which has helped me, because also I feel the pandemic still holds a lot of grief. I lost my sister to cancer. I wasn't able to go home, and there's nothing I can do to change that. There was no vaccine, there were no tests available, and I took a decision, and I have to live with that decision. But playback and improv has been like a light to hope for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right that there is a lot of grief left in the world in the pandemic. I in fact, we're not like through it. So I think that I personally worry that it's a bit of a powder keg, like that it's still got some explosions in it, and not necessarily like infection wise or whatever. Like, I don't mean like, oh, there's going to be another strain that knocks it out. I mean, like, emotionally, we have had to deal with so many different things, and now the difference in our emotional, like, what does that mean to us? How has it affected each one of us individually to be separate from each other, to have a different way of dealing with people? Like, how is that? For some people, it's like, oh, I didn't realize I was an introvert, and this is great now, and I'm able to, figure out what it is that I want. Like, I can live this work from home life and it makes me better. Great. Now, some people, like, they are just social butterflies, but they can't deal with it, and they just can't. They haven't been able to at all, and it like tears them up inside to not be able to talk to people, connect, wander around, talk to strangers. I mean, at this point, I talk to so many strangers, and gosh, they look at me like I'm crazy. Like they used to look at me like I was crazy when I talk to strangers, but it's way worse now. Like, it is like so much more of like, they look at me like I've got 6 heads, like, but I love it. I love talking to strangers. I love connecting to random people. And, I just haven't been able to. I just have not been able to do that in a way that, like, is real. And that plus all of the change of lifestyle, the change of the way that we consume our lives, the way that things come to us and we connect with other human beings. Like, I watched something, and it was literally a before the pandemic thing. And they were like, the only thing that we need in this life is to connect with each other. And I was like, isn't it just so crazy that that's the thing that got taken away from us? Like, the one most human thing in the world, to be connected with human beings. We were both given it and taken away at the same time. Like, I'm always saying that the pandemic allowed us to have a global community, and that's wonderful. Like, the fact that we even talk, that we've met, you know what I mean, is insane. But at the same time, like, now, but our physical connections, the, like, body to body situations, like when I have a 4-year-old, and when I have the baby, they tell you that you need to hold that baby skin to skin to connect with that person. There's a person, and this person needs to have their little bare chest against my bare chest to physically like commune as a part of the human race. Like, that's wild. And right now we're kept separate from that, on top of all of the terrible things that have happened in death and, wars and just, separations, where it's like, why are you taking advantage of this? Like, all sorts of crazy, terrible treatment. I think it'll be many years before we'll get over it, to the point where I actually think that when my kid is an adult, like when my kid is in his 40s, like I am, like his reflection on us, the people who lived as adults through the middle of the pandemic, it's almost like wartime. Like you meet a person who went to war and they're kind of shaky and they have a hard time dealing with stuff. And you're like, yeah, he had a tough time. Like, yeah, don't talk about this because he went through a lot. I feel like that's going to be all of us for a while. There's going to be a generation of older people where they're like, yeah, just let them play. It's fine. They don't need to talk about serious stuff. They've had a lot of serious stuff. Like, and that grief will likely hang with our generation for all of it, or frame us and help us understand the world in our own new and different way.
Yeah, I especially have been thinking about, like, I've had several nephews and nieces born during this time, and I can't even imagine. You need a village to bring up a child, and all of these moms and parents are like having to find it in themselves to keep going through every day. I feel there is this intergenerational trauma that we have to find more ways of acknowledging and expressing, because you can see the patterns of aggression and violence affect one another, and it's like a domino effect. So hopefully we'll find better tools rather than going chasing Mars and the ridiculous plans that seem to be floating around.
Yeah. But, well, and I think that I truly believe, and it's sort of in the essence of my calling of it, is that I think that that's what artists are for. Artists are here to help process the information. Artists are here to show you different ways to look at things, to, like, even you're talking about playback as a way to process somebody else's life experience. You process it in your own way. It's the most, like, pure essence of an artist reflecting back on you, something that has gone on. All of the art built around right now, I mean, we will all need distance from it, but in 10, 15 years when we're in museums and there's like a whole pandemic section, it's like, that stuff's going to be amazing because it's so like heightened emotion, and each person had a different perspective of how it went for them and what it had to do with and what it affected, the feelings it made. And then another layer of difference is then each artist expresses themselves differently. But like, art is the way that you are able to understand it. Even if it's, you read a poem 20 times and you don't really know what it's about, like, you get the vibe of that person. You get that this person wrote this for a reason. Last night, you were talking about writing groups before. I have a writing group and we read short stories in the writing group and then talk about it. And last night we read this story and it was just like, so hard to get through. It was like really difficult, and it was really dense. It's just a lot of weird detail that we were like, what is this even about? We're like, clearly this is a deep metaphor, but a metaphor for what? And so then we get into discussions, and it was great because there's 10 of us, and each one of us have a different theory about what it's about and what it relates to and how it connects to the world in which it was written. Like, oh, okay, this guy's from Argentina. This was in the 40s. Like, okay, what happened in Argentina in the 40s? Like, and we're researching history to be like, okay, he experienced this, so then that made him do that. Like, the idea of even analyzing that and trying to think about this artist, I could not get through reading this story. But why? But I'm still fascinated and deeply respectful of this artist for doing it. Like, I don't get it, but maybe I'm just not in the mindset that he was in when he wrote it. So I'm like, okay, let's get to the mindset of what it is and figure it out from there. Or like we did before I went down my let's investigate his historical context, was how I thought of it, what it meant to me. And the fact that art has all those things, that art can be a reflection of this person who made it, and we can analyze and be interested in them and their history and culture, or we can see a reflection of ourselves in it and process our own life experience through this other person's expression. Like, that's how artists are the ones who will help us get through this whole thing, and why I think that we as artists have a higher purpose in this world.
I think we do art so we can create resonances, and we can it satisfies us to build these connections, to be like, oh, that was your story, this is my story, and these are like the Venn diagram where both of our stories are like interconnecting, and there are these tripping over stories. So I very strongly feel about that. I very strongly feel about art has, like I was saying, when I was traveling from India to London, and London, you still had to quarantine for 15 days. I was lucky to do the improv place. I think it was called Improv Place then. Now it's called the space made by Chris Mead and Katie Shute, where they had like an improv intensive. So we were like, it was quite intense because there was a lot of Zoom time, but just having a community of people that, I didn't even feel the dread of being in a room locked up, because it was like constantly making scenes, and even in that really narrow space, like making improv happen. And that certainly helped me cope with being in a hotel room stuck for 15 days, among so many other things. I hope that the playback tools that we teach the college students, especially the young adults, give them some space to reflect, because a lot of them have gone through very challenging times before reaching this country, and are coming from very, very different lived experiences. And I feel I have so much to learn from them, and I look forward to that. And I hope what we share is in some part also useful for them, gives them some tools to communicate. Like I feel, there's quite a lot, right? Even as adults, we feel there's so much, and I really wonder how the kids are managing, how the young adults are coping. There's so much of information, there's so much of theories, back theories, fake news. It's quite difficult. So I'm hoping. I strongly feel the only hope is in finding community and creating safe spaces and talking about it. And I hope in all of the things that I'm trying to do, I am able to create that for the people I interact with. Yeah.
I really love your the way that you view how to create this art. A lot of people come at art with a very egotistical view. So many of us are like, I like being on stage because I like people to look at me. But I like that yours starts from this like want of people to connect with each other, this like interest in helping human beings figure out ways to process, like, with reference to your interest in making sure that young people have a chance to do art. I think that it is absolutely necessary for them, especially right now, to process the world around them and then how they're going to deal with it moving forward.
Yeah.
So in what ways right now in your life are you working to enact your larger dreams? Huge question.
Yeah, I think resonating to what you were sharing earlier, one of my team members, Ria, had done this beautiful themed playback show on the, I forget the exact phrase, but it was about the weight we carry in our shoulders. And I was an audience member in that show. And I feel that's why playback is so magical, because even as an audience member, you're so affected by the resonances you feel in the room. And every time I remind myself about the weight that I carry, and then like I pull myself up and I breathe. And I think for me, like, it's about the tinier things, about, like, I feel it's about just waking up every day and doing yoga. It's about remembering to breathe. I feel for me, one of my goals is to choose my words very, very carefully, to speak succinctly, to journal every day. Those are the kind of goals that I'm hoping that I can implement and just show up every day for myself to be the artist that I want to be. Because 2 years ago, if you asked me, am I an artist, I would say I will make it happen. I will support you. I will cheerlead you. And for me, it is now slowly, I'm coming to the realization is that I have a lot of stories. I have some translations that I'm looking to share with, and I still don't know where and how it will happen. But these tiny rituals are giving me some sense of how I could frame going forward.
Man, that's great. I like the idea of rituals because I think that they're very necessary in our lives. And how even just the basic movement of something that you do over and over can help you process, right? I'm a big pen to paper person. I may have forgotten to tell you, but the whole time I'm taking notes. So like, that's how I process. Like, and part of my experience of talking to you is my writing down phrases, not just to write down phrases so that I can write it in the blurb later, but yes, it is, but also like, for me to like hear what you're saying, make notes, and then when I'm going to respond, I'm like, oh yeah, we talked about this thing. And also it helps to, for me personally, it helps to see themes. Now, I think that that's an important part of being an artist as well, is like using your own stories and trying to figure out what your own themes are. Like figure out the way that you process, understand the way that you look at the world, and maybe lean into some, like who we are is great. And it's really just a matter of trying to be, like you said earlier, more fully yourself. Like, how do I become me to the best of my ability? And if you just are focused on not judging yourself, but rather just like embracing who you are, I think that really can help you process everything from the positive aspects of being on stage and enjoying performing to how do I process grief in this moment? Like even just knowing and saying out loud, I'm processing grief is like so many steps past half the people are processing grief who aren't even admitting that they're in it, right? Like there are many people. My sister works at a grocery store, and so for her, the pandemic did not change her life at all. She continued to work full time the whole time. She's never had time off. Like every minute of her day is exactly the same. She never had, like a lot of us were like, well, I guess I'm just going to sit in my house for 3 or 4 weeks or years. But like for her, no, she worked in what is kind of at this point the front lines of survival for the community, which was we need the people to continue to work at the grocery store. And so while I had all this I'm talking to her and I'm like, well, my job's gone. I guess I'm going to have to get on assistance because I have nothing. And there's no job that I'm vaguely qualified for even available. Right. And then she's like, yeah, nothing stopped for me. She's like, she and her husband both work at the grocery store. They went just every day. There was never a day off. It was like regular life. Nothing ever stopped for her. And I was just like, man, that is this experience, the difference in experience and the fact that she never even got a moment to process it. She the idea of grief or dealing with the pandemic or even fear. Nope. She didn't have 2 seconds to deal with that. She's got 3 kids and she's working full time. She didn't have a minute. You know what I mean? Yeah. Every time I talk to her, she's like, I need a nap. And I was like, I bet you do, girlfriend. You are busy. But it's like that as so many of us, and hopefully when she's watching movies and TV, she's able to process it through that, the art of those shows that she can consume can help her to process what she's going through by watching these other people talk about it. I mean, it's a fascinating thing, even just in our world of having so many different outlets of art. You know, there's television, there's movies, but then there's also like Instagram and TikTok and like blogs and podcasts and like, oh, everybody's processing it in different ways, and they've got different situations, and they're consuming in different ways. Like, there's something really beautiful about all the different ways that art is helping people in everyday life, but certainly to get through this toughest of times.
There's this, so citylamps had, in collaboration with Puchku project, done 2 shows themed on grief, today and 2 days ago. And grief also is such a very wide landscape in the way it affects us, in the way we carry it in our body, in the way grief is not only about like the sadness and you know the punch in your gut, but it's also about the promise that can never be fulfilled, about the deep memory and yearning you have for something that can never come back. And I feel this is what been my coping mechanism of being busy to not process my grief. And it's something I see in my mom, it's something I see in you know, and this being busy has taken over my life, and you know, I felt that I'm going to get through it, because the grief is just so gut-wrenching that it's very uncomfortable to sit with. And for me, my learning, and still a long way to go, has been to sit with that uncomfortable grief, to observe how it has affected my decisions, and to be more familiar with its patterns in my body.
Definitely. The idea of patterns in your body, like the way something affects you, I started using that idea to teach acting to students, like, because people or early level acting students would come to me and be like, I can't cry on stage. And I was like, well, not everybody cries when they're sad. And then we talked about different ways that we react to different emotions, like in my classroom in this scenario. And then I came up with this exercise in which we all faced different corners of the wall. So we were monologuing essentially to ourselves all at once. And I would give them a emotional focus. So it'd be like, this one's going to be anger. Monologue about something that makes you angry. And you're going to go from 0 level, I'm not that angry, to 10, I'm the most angry. And how do you do that? And when we finished, we'd come back into a circle and I'd say, where in your body do you physically feel that anger? Where in your body do you physically feel the sadness? And it would be different for everybody, right? We did one about fear, and some people are like shivering, some people are talking a lot. And there was one girl who made no noise and did nothing. And I watched her for the whole time. And if I thought that she was not engaged, I would have gone over and tried to like help her with the project. But she seemed to be super engaged, even though she wasn't saying anything. So then when we came back, I said, how did everybody process that fear? What physical manifestations did you find? And she's like, I froze. I froze and was in my head about that fear, and I couldn't move, and I didn't scream, and I just felt like I couldn't do anything. And I said, okay, that's how you process that. And I said, and that's how you can process it on stage. You act like that, because that is how a person reacted to fear. And that is how many people react to fear. Like, and so I think that and so I did this exercise. Oh, I'm so sorry. My alarm is going off. Goodness. I processed that for myself, because I taught that class so many times, I realized as I'm leading this with them that I am also telling them, this is where I feel the anger in my body. This is where I feel the happiness in my body. This is where I feel the sadness. And then in real life, I was able to be in a scenario where I got angry, but acting angry or expressing my anger to the person was not going to solve the problem. And I was only thinking bad, angry things to say to this person. But the logical part of my brain knew, hey, don't say that. That's not gonna end well. But I didn't realize that I was even angry until I felt it in my body in that way. And I learned so much about myself and how my body holds the emotions. So now if I'm feeling like, I get into a fight with my husband and I'm gonna say something and it's not a nice thing. If I feel the anger in me in the spots where it exists, I'm like, okay, don't say that. Because you're saying something out of anger and that's not what you really mean. And when you cool off, if you still think that, well, you can have that discussion, but you need to acknowledge it. And I feel like what you're saying about grief, like where we hold it in our body, as long as we can acknowledge it, as long as we can be aware of it and, not distance ourselves necessarily, but at least be aware like, I'm reacting to this in this way because I'm feeling grief. It's not empirically bad, or it's not like this situation is terrible, so I got to get out of it. It's like, no, right now it's just triggered my grief. And now I'm dealing with that and not the current situation that I'm in. And I feel like being an actor and acknowledging these parts of ourselves and exploring the way our bodies feel and the way that we think and have emotions can really help us live a more informed way in the world. Like, more about the way you are feeling in a real sense and how to express it with the other people around you. That's not going to be just like ruining everything and burning every bridge,
Yeah. I think one of the audience members shared this quote about grief is also that there was a relationship, there was that resonance, there was that deep connection, and when that breaks, which is why there is grief. And there is this beautiful book written on the body, I think it's called, which also talks about the similar kind of the patterns that we make in our neuroscience and in the way we have built circuits in the way we experience certain emotions. And another thing that I thought about when you were talking about your acting training, in Kudyatam, which is it's a Sanskrit theater form, which is considered to be a very old form of theater, which I recently came to know perhaps has connections to Buddhism. So the theater technique focuses on the breath and how your breath changes with experiencing of different emotions. And I got an opportunity to explore and experience these art forms and be around these artists because of Spikmeke. But it is quite fascinating about how the transformation that the actors have in being able to bring that focus in and being able to it's just it's performed once you experience it. It's like the artist is making eye movements, like the ball of their eye moves with the beat of the drum, and the artist is using just this much of a frame when they are communicating, and so it's only the movement of the hands and the facial expressions, but the kind of training that goes into creating, adopting that art form and making it your own, and it's very, very fascinating. And the arts has so much of, like, I'm not a big fan of ritual and traditional art forms, but I feel there is a lot of wisdom in the way the art forms are crafted, in the techniques that make these artists as fantastic. They feel like celestial beings because they just become the character. They become the Rudra. That anger, and it is through breath. And yeah, it's very, very, very fascinating for me to what we think. Like I didn't know of Buddhism, and I feel of it like a philosophy out there, compassion. But there are so many interconnections and there's so many subtleties to uncover and unpack.
Totally. Yeah, it's amazing. It's also kind of amazing to think about these art forms that have lasted for so long. Like, how many years has this been passed down? There's got to be something really pure and great about it if it keeps going, if they keep doing it. I'm often like, hey man, say what you will about Shakespeare, but bro did not expect his stuff to be done so many hundreds of years after he was gone. Yeah. Like, nobody expected that. You just don't know. You don't know what catches, what makes people into it. And even the idea of this, like, acting based on breath, I'm like, dude, I love that. I don't know how I can get involved with that, but I want to learn so much more about it. But that's pretty amazing. So we've been talking for a long time and you've been so great and it's great to chat with you, but I don't want to take too much more of your time. I want to ask you one more question and it's going to change the tone a little bit. We've had some serious talks. This has been great. I love this we just got right into deep talks and we've really saved the world here with our art talk. So I'm feeling good about it. But what I want to ask you is, as for yourself, we're all going through this. What are you as an artist doing to creatively fill up your own cup? Like, what are you taking in? And you mentioned earlier the rituals of, doing yoga and doing some reading, but creatively, what are the activities that you're doing? And it doesn't even have to be like you performing. It could be like, oh, I listen to music or whatever in the mornings, whatever it might be. What is it that's creatively filling you back up?
I am involved with a community called Music in the Machan, which is started by, I was like, okay, there's one more community I'm part of, but yeah, that's me.
You love a community. It's into it. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
So Shruti Veena Vishwanathan is an artist based in Pune, and she has been researching on the women mystical poets and singers from many times before, and so she's been archiving that recording. When the lockdown struck and pandemic happened, she was in a remote village in Bengal, and that's when she started having these sessions every day at 9 a.m. And I just help a little bit in sharing the YouTube link, so for anyone in another time zone can still access it. And so we start with breath and music and folk songs and all kind of languages, and I think there's a lot of this whole idea of connecting through resonance, which is a narrative practice too. There's a lot of value in creating community around that. So while Shruti has started the community, everyone sings. Anyone can bring a song that speaks to them, and then we learn the song together. And I'm in UK time zone. I try and get up at 3:30 in the morning sometimes to just be in the community, and I listen to the music that has happened that day, even if I am not able to be there in the morning at 9 India Standard Time now. I would again like to recommend Kavya's space. Kavya Srinivasan is another lamplit and Adamant Eve improviser. She runs the Right Time every Wednesday. This is, I think, 9 p.m. IST. She runs it with another friend, Akshay, and together they're creating a space for artists to come and spend time on their art. Another friend and theatre playbacker in my London team, Andrea, she is a sound therapist. So she has done a lot of research and training in sound. And so she also holds an artist circle, which I recommend. Jennifer Jordan. I cheerlead a lot of people, so you must tell me when I should stop. Like, Jennifer Jordan is running this beautiful, it's a year-long improv and bringing what you're really passionate about every Sunday. She has 2 batches, so strongly recommend that. And Katie Schutz, Moon Circle, might have a few spots available. I think, I feel, they're all of the improvisers that I have met. I feel like there's this resonance, there's this feeling of, where were you all this time? Like, yeah, really, really fascinating. And I feel like I'm digressing, so I'm good to know.
No, you're great. I'm so glad that there are so many different workshops and communities across the world that you are connecting with on a regular basis to help with that. I think that people thought, zoomprov happened for like 10 minutes and then it was over. And now it continues that artists are connecting globally and, having I love that each one of the things that you brought up are like so niche, like everyone has their very specific ideas, and that's just so super great. And it sort of harkens back to what we've been talking about this whole time, the like beautiful nature of each artist and like what they're bringing to the table. So I'm so glad that artists around the world that are actively working right now are, what is truly filling up your cup, as we make our way through the, I'm going to say, latter end of the pandemic. Knock on wood. Anisha, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your time with me and your stories. Thank you for having these deep talks with me. It's been so great to connect with you and to, make friends face to face on Zoom. Sorry, everybody, you don't get the face. I do. Woo!
Thank you, Amy. I think this is such a precious project that you've imagined, and 300 episodes. I'm so very proud of you. Very happy and excited for you. And I feel, this is such a beautiful rainy day podcast, any day podcast, inspirational podcast. Thank you. Thank you for, giving yourself this imagination and drawing all these moths and butterflies who are maybe feeling all alone in the dark and bringing light to us. We're not alone. We're more similar than different.
We are not alone. And to bring back this idea that you were talking about earlier about how the group brought only famous artists and so people thought that was it. One of the other things that I think about whenever I create this podcast is all the different stories of all the different artists that are at varying levels that maybe aren't famous. I've interviewed a couple of people who have been famous, but a lot of people that are not, and know each artist is valuable in their own individual way. And that's part of what I want to shine the light on, everybody's individual beauty and creativity.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all of our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.